let's talk about clean eating and what you need to understand. So number one of the questions that I frequently get asked is, if you're eating on the road, how do you possibly stay gluten free? Gluten free eating is such a challenge, and I say where most people struggle is because they have the attitude of, okay, we're going to go and we're going to travel, we're going to depend on restaurants as our sole source of food supply. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make is when you travel, first of all, understand that no matter where you're at, even if you're in a huge city, you're going to run the risk anytime you eat out of a cross-contamination event, meaning you could get into a restaurant, order from a gluten-free menu, do everything right, but the people serving the food mess it up. That's always a risk, and you should be aware of that. That's why I don't recommend solely relying on restaurant foods when you are traveling. One of the best strategies is what I call the food suitcase. It's carrying food with you. And so what you would want to carry with you, obviously perishables, depending on where you're going and how far you're traveling and whether you're going across international lines or not. But so you want to bring, usually with your food suitcase, it's non-perishables. You're not packing heads of cabbage or apples or things of that nature in that suitcase, but you're packaging the lesser perishable types of items. So one of the things that I love to travel with that I keep handy, and I've even got some here because again I'm traveling, is beef jerky. And you could do beef jerky, chicken jerky, turkey jerky, buffalo jerky. There are a number of different companies, a number of different varieties. My advice, though, is that whichever company you're choosing, you're making sure the meat is sourced from a quality place. In essence, these are grass-fed beef sticks, and that's what I would recommend, again, if you're eating beef. One of the other things that you can carry, and I don't like fish so much, so I don't carry a lot of this, is sardines. So when my son is with me and we're traveling, we'll carry cans of sardines. Sardines, non-perishable, they're easy to travel with, they pack easy. Sardines or packaged tuna or packaged salmon are great sources of animal proteins, so that when you're traveling, if you get in a bind and you're hungry and either you have the choice of a restaurant that's going to serve you some type of injected meat that's not really what you think it is, or you have what you brought with you. And so sometimes that's the best choice. So packing a food suitcase with less perishable items, again, canned meats, whether it be fish, tuna, salmon, those are good options. Or you can do jerkies. Jerkies travel really, really well. Now, one of the other things I like to travel with is nuts. And so in this case, I've got pistachios, organic pistachios, but that's just one option. You've got pistachios and almonds and pecans and walnuts. There are a number of different varieties, even tiger nuts, which aren't technically a nut, they're a tuber. Great options for traveling with. And they last a really long time, and they're high caloric. So the fact that they're high caloric means you can eat them, you're going to get a lot of calories out of it. So if you get into a bind later where, your choice is either not to eat or to eat some food that could potentially ruin your health or set you back, then you've got nuts as a high calorie source, so you're not going to starve. So nuts are one of the great things I like to do. Now, there's something else I really like to travel with too, and that's there are a couple different brands of this, but grain-free granolas. And what these typically contain are a variety of dried fruits and nuts, and in some cases, coconut oil or coconut chips or coconut flakes. And so these can be a really good, again, lightly perishable. They last a really long time. They travel really easy, and they're high calories, so you can get a lot of calories, and you don't have to worry about going hungry. And so that's just another option for you in terms of travel. Now, one of the other things I like to do if I'm planning the trip, now, like in this case, I didn't really plan it. I was planning on coming home last week. It wasn't able to happen. So what I did when I knew I was going to be stuck in Phoenix, and so this is travel tip number 2, which is accommodations. Like how do you get the right accommodations or plan for that? Well, there's some great sites online. Like I booked through a company called hotels.com. The reason why I use them is because they have a great mobile app, and I can book something in an emergency or on the fly really easy. But the other thing that I like about it is they have a map feature. So I can look for hotels around a particular area, and I can find out the exact location and see that on a map, because the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to find, when I'm trying to book the booking accommodation, I'm going to try to find a place that has a kitchenette, as opposed to just a hotel room. If I can find a place with a kitchenette where there's a refrigerator and a stovetop, and then I can find a grocery store and I can do some of my own cooking and I can do some of my own food production. And so that's always a better option. So if you've got a place with a kitchenette, that can work really, really well. Right now, that's what I have. I have a place that has a kitchenette. It's an extended stay hotel. It's actually a little bit cheaper even than a regular hotel to stay at an extended stay, which is kind of surprising because the square footage here is twice the size of a hotel room. I have a dining room, I have a living room, and I have a kitchen, and I have a bedroom in this place. And it's relatively inexpensive. So a lot of these extended stay places, because they don't book out as frequently as hotels, you can get a better discounted rate. So that's one thing to consider. Now, the other thing I consider is, where are the grocery stores? I want to try to stay in proximity to a grocery store, preferably an organic grocery store. So one of the things I will look up before I book my hotel is, where are the natural grocery stores in an area, like Natural Grocers or Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. Like, these are options where I know I can potentially get organic produce. I can get clean food, or at least better screened food, something that's a little bit of a healthier variety, where I have the possibility to pick up organic, so I'm not exposing myself to the potential for a lot of pesticides when I am buying produce. So once I know where there's a natural type of grocery store, then I can look at the hotel distance and I can say, okay, if I can't, depending on your situation, maybe you want to rent a car, maybe it's not a place where it's convenient to rent a car. I personally like to walk. So, today where I'm actually at a place where there's a Whole Foods right across the street. And, that's why I actually booked this hotel. Was one, it had a kitchenette, two, it had a Whole Foods across the street. So that makes things a little bit easier. So a lot of this, when you're traveling, if you have time to plan for it, and most trips are planned, they're not just thrown at you at the last minute. In this case, I was just thrown in this situation, but most trips are planned. So you have a little bit more time to use the internet as a tool to search out the hotel, what kind of accommodation, what kind of grocery stores are going to be around it, and what's going to be within walking distance or maybe even a short drive. And you have the ability to do that. Now, the other thing you can do is, so aside from, like, for me, the Whole Foods is right across the street, so I'm able to pick up things like organic raspberries. I'm able to go and pick up healthy meats and cook them. Like, I can pick up a chicken and bake it because I have a stove. So again, that makes things easier. But let's just say I didn't have something quite so convenient. Let's just say you don't have that Whole Foods where there's an organic salad bar that you can pick the salad off of. Maybe you have a grocery store, but you don't have some of the prepared food options, organic prepared food options. Now you can use your time to prepare in advance and look for restaurants there's some key search terms here you want to think about. One of those key search terms is farm to table. So farm to table is oftentimes, if you look up restaurants that have farm to table options, what that means is that the restaurant owner is generally sourcing food from a local farm. In a lot of cases, it's organic. So they're getting fresh, locally grown, seasonally available produce, and they're making the food from whatever's available. The menus in those types of places frequently are different because it's based upon the seasonal availability of different things. So farm to table might be an option for restaurants when you're traveling. And it's like, if you're on a vacation and you want to enjoy yourself and you want to eat out a little bit more, farm to table is one of those search terms that you can plug in. And you can pull back different types of options. You might also try organic restaurants as a search term, and you'll be able to pull up different types of options with that. One of the other search terms I really like to use is Paleo Restaurants. Okay, you might not have been thinking about all these different possibilities, but Paleo Restaurants is another great search term to use when you're traveling or when you're planning that trip. And then another one that you can type in, oftentimes it will pull up restaurants that the other search terms won't, is, if, again, this doesn't work so much if you're a vegetarian, but it can work really, really well in that if you're looking for a higher quality food, you can type in restaurants that serve grass-fed beef, because typically if a restaurant's taking the effort to provide grass-fed beef, they have a greater understanding of health because they're spending that extra money to provide that higher quality to their to their patrons. So those are all really great search terms to use if you're looking for restaurants. And what's great about planning for your trip when you're traveling is you can actually get online. You have a little bit of time. Again, not an emergency situation. You have a little bit of time. You can get online. You can go to the restaurant's website. Most of them have menu options that you can look at. So you have a little bit of time to look at what they have to offer, and kind of map out what it is that you want to do. Remember, part of staying healthy is you have to plan, where other people don't plan. They just, they eat what they find. And that's why they suffer the health consequences that they do. So you remember, the cost of staying healthy is you have to pre-plan and you have to prepare, right? There's an old saying, failing to plan is planning to fail. And when it comes to your health, that's just not an option. So you've got to go into this with a little bit of preparation in mind. Just like you might plan on your vacation, you might plan your excursions or your trips or your different side where you want to go visit. If you want to go to a museum, you got to plan what time, you got to plan for tickets. There's a lot of different things that you can plan for, and you just have to take a little bit of time to do it. Now, what I will warn you about there are a lot of different gluten-free restaurant apps. Now, the problem with gluten-free restaurant apps is in how they define gluten. Remember that gluten-free does not equal true gluten-free. And so those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you need to go pick up a copy of my book, No Grain, No Pain. It'll save your life if you're still eating all that, what's being called gluten-free. I call it gluten-free swill because it's not good for you. It's extremely unhealthy. But, you've got to understand the difference between gluten-free and true gluten-free. So a lot of those restaurants, for example, they'll have a gluten-free menu, and they'll be serving up on that gluten-free menu all kinds of sauces that have genetically modified rice in them. They'll be serving up, not genetically modified rice, I mean genetically modified corn. They'll be serving up rice on the gluten-free menu. They'll have things like rice syrup sweetening their sauces, on that gluten-free menu, but it won't be obvious to you. And so if you're just trusting that app or that restaurant guidebook that maybe you bought that was a gluten-free restaurant guidebook, remember, you've got to take it one step further. That's why when I gave you search terms to find places to eat, I didn't say type in gluten-free, because you've got to go a little bit deeper than that. You've really got to use search terms grass-fed, again, grain-free. You need to look for paleo options, because if you're not finding those, you're gonna get gluten from what are usually considered the safe grains, right? The corn and the rice are the two most common. But remember, corn and rice both have forms of gluten that have been shown to detriment people with gluten sensitivity. And you don't want to get caught in a place on a vacation where you're supposed to be going and having fun and enjoying yourself, and you get hammered on accident because they served you genetically modified corn sauce, on your in your salad dressing. And now you're spending a day or 2 days feeling horrible, maybe depending on what your response to is, or your response to getting exposure is. Some people get headaches. Some people get severe migraines. Some people get muscle cramps. Some people get severe fatigue. Some people get severe diarrhea. Some people get joint pain. So you don't want to end up on your vacation suffering with an untoward effect of the food that you're eating because you failed to plan on where you were going to be eating. So again, a little planning goes a long way when it comes to eating. Now, one of the other things when you're traveling is water. Like, where are you getting your water? So what I like to do is, if I can find that grocery store, that grocery store near the hotel, I'm going to go pick up water from it. And oftentimes, if you're trying to avoid phthalates and plastic jugs and drinking water out of plastic, one of my favorite brands is this one right here. This is a glass canister. It's not done in plastic. It's a little bit more expensive, but again, I kind of have the attitude that your health is worth it, and it's a lot more expensive when you're in the hospital because you've abused yourself over a number of years. So keep in mind that that's one of the best things to do. Now, some grocery stores actually have reverse osmosis filtration devices within the store, and you can actually pick up a glass jug and you can refill it in these units. And it, for example, a lot of stores have an RO filter box, and it costs $0.25 to fill up a gallon of water. So that's a really cost affordable option as well. If you can pick up a glass jug and you can go and take it and get it filled. So it's a lot cheaper to do it that way, or you can use the brand like what I use. So those are all just different traveling options that you can have. Now, one of the other things I love to carry with me when I'm traveling, I like to carry my vitamins, okay, because especially if you're getting on planes, I have several different things that I like to travel with. One is my multivitamin, because I want to make sure if I'm limited on food sources and what I can and can't eat because there's just not a lot of availability where I'm traveling, then I want to make sure that I'm energized, even if I have to fast a little bit. And that's another tip, is that sometimes when I travel, I don't eat. And that doesn't mean, if you're gone for a week, you don't eat for a week. That means I skip several meals. I don't eat as much. I eat a lot less. But the meals that I do eat are higher quality and high nutrient density and high caloric density. But I like to take my vitamins with me so that I can get added nutrients while I am traveling. So again, if I do have to reduce my food, I don't suffer the consequences of energy deprivation in that process, and I still have adequate nutrients, vitamins, and things of that nature to be able to tap in and still have a great time and not pay the price. I also like to take my fish oil, and I like to take my Gluten Shield. And those of you who don't know what that is, this is the enzyme that I travel with in case I am eating at a restaurant. And I'll eat out at a restaurant when I travel. That's even though there's always the risk of cross-contamination. But if I take my Gluten Shield before I eat the meal, I'm going to get a level of protection from the gluten. Now, what I don't want anyone who's listening to do is use that Gluten Shield and just say, hey, I'm just going to eat a bunch of this so I can go to Subway and eat a 6-inch Subway with bread. That's not what it's designed to do. It's designed to help you process minimal gluten exposure and minimize the damage if you do get cross-contamination. It's not designed to allow you to eat gluten. Now, a number of companies that are out there selling products, and they're making claims that you can eat all the gluten you want if you use this gluten-blocking enzyme. There's no such thing as eating all the gluten you want if you're gluten-sensitive, and you should never use any of these enzyme products as an excuse to eat gluten if you are gluten-sensitive, so keep that in mind. So again, I take a multivitamin, I pack my omega-3s, I pack my vitamin C, because when you're on the airplane breathing the tube air, you're getting all the germs from all the other people in a closed, tight quarters. And I want to make sure that wherever I'm going, I'm not going to end up sick or immune suppressed because somebody on the plane was sick and I had to share their breathing space. And then I'll bring my Gluten Shield in case I'm eating out anywhere, and I'll give myself that extra layer of protection. So those are all kind of nutritional strategies that work really, really well when you're traveling to maintain your health. Because one of the things that happens if you're going from one time zone to another time zone, right, you've got to adjust for that. Like I'm right now, I'm on the West Coast timeline, so I'm 2 hours early than what I am in the Central time zone. And sometimes you might be those of you who travel overseas, there may be an 8 or a 10 or a 12-hour difference in the time zone. One of the things that you can do when you're traveling in those situations is take with you some melatonin. I have something called controlled release melatonin, or melatonin CR. And what that allows you to do is wherever you're going, the time zone is going to be, if it's going to be vastly different and you're having a hard time with your sleep and adjusting your time clock, you can take the first day that you're there, take one of these before you go to bed, about an hour before you go to bed, and it's going to help reset your circadian clock to the time zone that you're in, so that you have less jet lag and you can enjoy more time of your vacation without paying the price of that, that really horrendous jet lag. Because melatonin is going to help, basically it's going to help your body recognize what the new nighttime should be versus what the old nighttime must be. So it's just kind of a way to accelerate you into that time zone and prevent any kind of jet lag that might happen. So, okay. Let's dive into some of the questions that are rolling in. Looks like we got a few that are coming in. Let's see here. Well, Laurie's saying, hope you and your clinic are not buried in water. I was very blessed, Laurie. Thank you for your concern. My clinic was completely spared. Keep your prayers going because it's not over yet. The river around my clinic is expected to crest on Friday, and that's when we'll really know whether it's going to be underwater. But right now, as it stands, the water's high, but the clinic is very safe. Same thing with my house. My house and my clinic are within a 5-mile radius of each other. So we've been very blessed geographically to be located in an area that's just been fortunate to not have flooded. So, just very blessed that way. Thank you for your concerns. Let's see here. Oh, Chris Harris from all the way from Bismarck, North Dakota. Hello back to you. Um, Hetty was chiming in the Find Me Gluten Free app as a I guess as an option for you to look for different places. Again, it's not a bad idea to have it, but remember that don't just trust that because it says it's gluten free that it's true gluten free. Just keep that in mind. But it might help you find at least restaurants that are conscientious about that. Okay. Okay, here's another comment. Sweet potato fries fried in the same fryer with the chimichangas. Yeah, you got to be real careful if you're eating out. One of the things that can happen is the oil cross-contamination can be a problem. There's a couple major places in the kitchen where cross-contamination is a problem. One is in the fryer, because a lot of the French fries, they're pre-made and they're dusted with wheat flour or they're coated in some type of wheat to make them crispier when you fry them. So if they're cooking your sweet potato fry that's technically supposed to be gluten-free in an oil where they're also cooking, batter-wrapped chicken or batter-wrapped meats or even vegetables, then you're getting oil cross-contamination of gluten into yours. So you guys want to make sure they have a dedicated fryer for things that are supposed to be gluten-free. One of the other places we'll see cross-contamination in the restaurants are on the cutting boards. The cutting boards, if they're cutting up and preparing food, perfect example where I'm from in Texas, chicken fried steak is a real common meal. Now, chicken fried steak is, it's basically it's steak meat wrapped in breading and fried. And so if they're preparing that, if they're rolling their flour on the same surface that they're cutting your grilled chicken or grilled fish, then you can get some wheat flour contamination on your food. And again, that can land you in some hot water. So you want to make sure one of the questions you can ask in these situations is if the company or the restaurant has a dedicated gluten-free cooking area, meaning a dedicated segment of their kitchen that is designed to be completely gluten and grain-free. That can go a long way for preventing any kind of flour in the air. Remember, when you roll things in flour, that flour, it goes up. It does, it goes up and it aerosolizes in a sense, and it can go everywhere. So some restaurants go so far as to have a dedicated kitchen where they're basically separating out any food that's been prepared with the different types of grain. So all those things being said, got to keep that in mind when you are eating out. Okay. Let's see here. Looks like I've got all your questions answered tonight. So now's the time, because we're going to wrap it up. If you don't have, or if you have any last minute questions that you want to get in, now's the time to get them in. Now, this was kind of an impromptu meeting. I put it up tonight instead of Friday because I just found out I was going to be traveling home on Friday. So I apologize for the short notice. So the other thing I'd like you to chime in on is if you've got questions or if you've got things that you want me to talk about on future shows, I'm happy to entertain those different ideas based on the quantity of requests that we get. So that's something else you can leave me in the comment section and in the feedback section is any comments or feedback that you have about topics that you'd like me to cover for you so that we could get you educated. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a couple more seconds here. Make sure I get all the questions answered before we wrap it up. And while we're waiting, I'm going to put up a link for everyone. And this link, I just want you guys, and one of my staff members, she's my nutritional consultant, she lost her home. And what we're trying to do is we're really trying to support her and get her back on her feet. And if you have the ability, and I know many of you listening may be in the same situation, and God bless you if you are. But if you're able and willing, what I just put up was a GoFundMe. We put up a GoFundMe so that we could help her get her insurance deductible and everything else paid, so that she would have the capacity to come out of this a little less tarnished. Although I don't know how less tarnished you can be when you've lost your house and lost, all of your worldly possessions. And I know that those are not the most important things, and that family and life is the most important thing. But it's these people are really, really hurting down here in Houston. And again, if you can support her, we greatly appreciate anything that you can put in into that donation. 100% of those proceeds are going to go directly to her. Now, those of you who are customers for Gluten Free Society and our supplement store, and you're planning on doing any kind of purchases, I want you to use the promo code Harvey, and when you make that order. And what we're doing is as a portion of every supplement over the next week that gets bought, we're actually donating a portion of all proceeds into that GoFundMe fund as well for her to try to get her back up on her feet and get her family, food and shelter and clothing as they're going through this extremely trying time. So again, I put that promo code up there. Use promo code Harvey, and you'll save $10 off of any order, but we'll also be donating a portion of every order out to that GoFundMe campaign. So if you do that, I appreciate any support you can give, and greatly thank you in advance. Okay, Stephanie is asking, in general, do you add minerals back to reverse osmosis water? What kind? Is there a specific brand? It's a great question. A lot of people fear the RO water. I think there's some folks online talking about it, and I've heard it oftentimes referred to as dead water, and that's just not true. First of all, realize that there are very little minerals in water to begin with. Now, depending on where you're at and where the water comes from, for example, Fiji water from the name brand Fiji that water is very high in silicates. And but if you're drinking municipal water, you're not getting a ton of minerals out of it anyway. There are certain brands, there are a number of different brands of trace minerals that you can add back into reverse osmosis water. But if your diet is really clean, if you're eating a lot of fresh produce, locally grown, and seasonally available, and you're eating enough meat and things like bone broth, you're not really going to need the minerals. Remember, you're getting minerals. The bulk of your minerals don't come from your water. They come from the meats and the vegetables and the fruits and the nuts, those things that you're eating. So I would worry a lot less about drinking demineralized water from an RO filter, and I'd worry a lot more about not using an RO filter, and here's why. Just in Houston, and this was a study that was discussed a number of years ago. The Associated Press came out and reported on this, but just in Houston alone, 42 prescription drugs have been found in the drinking water after the water was filtered. And this is very, very similar in most of the major metropolitan cities across the United States. And the reason why people, they flush their drugs down the toilet, and that gets into the water supply. A lot of people, as they're metabolizing their drugs, they're peeing them out, right? And that ends up in the water supply. The problem is so severe that many pharmacies around the country have instituted hey, bring us your unused drugs. We don't want it in the drinking water program, because it is such a big problem. So it's much safer to use an RO unit and filter all that garbage out of your water than to use like a carbon-based filter that won't pull a lot of that stuff out and worry about loss of minerals. Again, if your diet is what it's supposed to be, real food, right? Real locally grown, seasonally available produce, organic in nature, grass-fed, free-range, organic, wild-caught meats, then you're going to be getting the magnitude of your minerals from the food that you're eating. Now, if you're eating a highly processed diet and you're drinking RO water, yeah, there's going to be a problem, but there's a problem with that already in the fact that the diet is highly processed. So worry a lot less about what RO does to the water. Worry a lot more about what's in the water if you're questioning whether or not that type of filtration is what you want to use. That's a great question. Thank you, Stephanie, for chiming in and asking it. Okay, so again, those of you who are, we got another one coming in. Michael Gentry is asking, is xanthan gum a concern I should have when I consume it in almond milk when I'm trying to avoid all and any potential grains. Yes, xanthan gum is typically it's derived from corn, not always, but very commonly so. So confirm its origin if you're trying to avoid grain. There are brands of almond milk that don't have xanthan gum. There are a lot of different types of gums. Xanthan gum and carrageenan gum are two that I highly recommend that most people try to avoid. Carrageenan gum, and I'll put up a link here for you. Carrageenan gum is one of those that it's been studied. It's gluten-free from that perspective. That's not that it contains any kind of gluten at all, but carrageenan gum has been shown to irritate the lining, the GI tract lining. I'm going to put that here in the comments for you guys if you want to go learn a little bit more about carrageenan gum and why I recommend not using it. The other thing I would recommend is, if you're trying to avoid all grains, is use the master list that I've put together and I update it every month. So when new research becomes available and we need to make changes or additions, we do so. So it's probably the world's most accurate, advanced list of potential grain sources or gluten-based sources. And I'm going to put that URL in here for you. Let's plug it in right here in the comment section again. So if you're looking to avoid kind of the hidden terms, if you want to know what those hidden terms and words are, this is the master list. If you see the ingredients on this list, my advice to you would be go ahead and leave it out. Keep it out of your diet, anything that you see on that list. So the other thing, I'm glad you brought that up, because the other thing you really want to worry about with almond milk, and it just depends on what the rest of your diet is like, but almond milk and almonds themselves are very high in omega-6 fatty acids. And I have seen people struggle to reduce their inflammation and their pain and their other problems because they were hyperinflamed. And one of the reasons a person can be hyperinflamed has to do with getting too much omega-6 in their diet. And remember, almonds are high in omega-6. Now, that doesn't mean you can't eat almonds or that you shouldn't eat almonds, but if you're doing almond flour on everything and almond milk with everything and eating lots of almonds and other nuts as primary staples, you're going to be driving up your omega-6 ratio, your omega-3, omega-6 ratio. You want that to be very well balanced. You want to get in almost as much omega-3 as you do omega-6. And so if you're gravitating toward a lot of gluten-free almond products and milks and things of that nature, that is one of the concerns that you should have, because the more exposure you get to, again, high levels of omega-6, the more that can disrupt your body's capacity to respond or recover from an inflammatory situation. Remember, inflammation is normal, but too much inflammation creates damage and potentiates disease. So that's really the big concern there. Good question. Good question, Michael. Let's see here. Chris and Mindy Bennett. What are your thoughts about Thai Kitchen organic unsweetened coconut milk? It has just 3 ingredients: organic coconut, water, and guar gum. It's fine. Guar gum is one of those. It's a perfectly fine gum. As a matter of fact, the topic of gums is coming up, and the topic fits really, really well with traveling, because generally when you're going to get exposed to the gums is when you travel. And let's see here. I'm going to put another link up for you on gums. Which gums are safe? Which gums are less safe? With this link, there's also an interview I did with Miradesi on food toxins and food additives. She's an expert on the food additives and the garbage that people get put in. And so in this list, we talk about carrageenan gum and agar gum and terra gum and gellan gum and xanthan gum and guar gum and locust bean gum. There's all these different kinds of gums, and, which ones, do you need to be the most cautious with, and which ones not so much. So I'm going to put that link in, all about gums, food gums, so that you can go and get an education in gums and learn a little bit more about which ones. But as far as the ingredients in that particular product, Mindy and Chris, that particular product is just fine. The coconut milk is organic, and the water is fine, and the guar gum is a safer. It's actually one of the safer gums. And if I were making a product that was requiring a gum, that would be one of the gums I would go with as far as safe gums. That one and acacia gum are two of the better choices to make. Now, one of the things you should be concerned about with gums, or that you might want to know about gums, is that they can also create constipation. So too much gum. Okay, so I get this a lot with patients who are constipated, and they're using a lot of gluten-free foods, and they're going toward a lot of products that contain gums in them, because the gums work, in a sense, the gums make things gummy, kind of like gluten makes things gummy. So a lot of the gums are used in higher quantities in some of the products that are being produced that are gluten and even grain-free. And the gums, again, they can pull and they can pull water into the bowel. Some of them can, but some of them add so much bulk that they can block up the stool, they can block up the bowel, and they can create a constipatory effect. So you just have to be careful. If you find that your diet's higher in gums, you may consider looking at where they're coming from and maybe backing down on some of the sources. And again, one of the most common symptoms in people traveling is constipation, and there are a lot of reasons for that. One is time zone switches. One is stress of travel. Like most people go on vacation. Why? Because they're trying to break away. They're trying to reduce their stress and take time off. But a lot of vacations can be very stressful. And anyone who's ever taken a vacation could probably resonate with that thought. Why are vacations? Why can they be so stressful? Because it's a lot of planning. You're traveling, you're out of your own element. You're not in your home where your highest level of parasympathetic comfort is. Remember, your parasympathetic nervous system is your relaxation nervous system. And when you're traveling through airports, getting frisked, running through machines, packing your bags, worrying about food, and worrying about, where everyone is, right? Especially if you're traveling with family, that actually can be quite a stressful endeavor, albeit stressful, yet great experiences can come out of great stress as well. So that's not to discourage any of you from wanting to take that vacation, but constipation can be one of those major problems that happen when you do travel, and so some people really, really run into a problem with that. Now, one of the things when you're traveling, if you do struggle with constipation, one of the things, real simple thing that you can do. Now, there's actually two that I recommend that are the easiest. One is vitamin C. If you take your vitamin C powder, your detox C powder with you, works great. You just make sure you're getting 5+ grams of that a day. It pulls water into your bowel, and it will help you maintain bowel movements when you're traveling. One of the other things you can do if you don't have any detox C is you can use the Ultra Magnesium, Ultra MG, and 600 to 800 milligrams of magnesium can really, really help. Again, it's a laxative. It has a kind of a laxative effect. It's a relaxation effect on the bowel, so it can help keep your bowels regular when you travel. A lot of times what happens to people when they do travel is that, one, they get cross-contaminated. Two, they're out of their element, so there's a little bit of higher stress, so that can lock down the bowels as well. Three, some people just plain cheat. They go on their vacation and they say, I'm going to eat what I want, I'm going to do what I want, and so be it, I'm going to pay the consequences. And so, that's one of the side effects for many people when they get gluten exposure is severe constipation. And so, if that's you, I don't condone it. I don't recommend it, but if that's you and you have to be honest with yourself. My advice is don't get backed up, because once you start getting backed up, if you're eating bad food and you're on vacation, that bad food stays inside of you. So all that chemical garbage can now start leaching through, breaking down your gut barrier, creating a leaky gut problem and making you sick. And that's why when a lot of people go on vacation, when they get home, they get sick, or they feel worse when they get home, or they gain weight while they're on vacation. So in the bad kind of weight, not like fat, but inflammatory weight, like water retention and the like. So if that's you got to keep that in mind. Keep it real when you're on vacation. Personally, I would rather not eat at all. I like to plan all of my vacations around, not around food at all. Although I plan for food, I don't plan around food. In essence, when I go to a particular city or a town, I'm not like, I can't wait to go to that restaurant. I try to plan the vacation around experiences. You're not going to remember what restaurant you ate in necessarily, but you're going to remember, if you go to the Caribbean and you do a zip line adventure, that's going to be something that you're going to remember. It's an experience you're not going to forget. So don't plan your trips around the food. In essence, don't go for the food, go for the experience, and plan your food into your vacation and be as stoic as you can about it. Because if you're not, you're going to pay a price. And sometimes, some people will say the price is worth it, and some people will say it's not. I'm one in that second category, but a lot of you will end up coming to me after you go on vacation. That's why I say it. You'll end up coming to me after you go on vacation and you've abused yourself and you're looking for answers. So hopefully this is helping you kind of prevent some of those problems when you are going on that trip. Anne Marie, I was waiting for this question. How do you heal quickly after accidental exposure to gluten, wheat, or ancient grains? So the best thing that you can do, Anne, is the first thing that you should do if you're doing any kind of travel, you're anticipating any kind of exposure. I'm going to put a link up here for you, is you should grab some Gluten Shield. And if you're traveling at all, you need to have it with you. This is kind of one of the big go-tos that I recommend is Gluten Shield. And I'm going to put up a few different things here. I'm going to put this up for you as a link. And again, if any of you listening are buying any of these things, use the promo code Harvey. You'll save a bunch of money, but you'll also help a fellow gluten-free warrior out who's lost her home. So here is a link to Gluten Shield right here. It's coming through right now. That's the first thing, is take that about 10 minutes before you eat if you didn't prepare the food. Number two is if you're trying to overcome a major catastrophe or a major problem, one of the things that you can do is use a product called Ultra Immune IgG. Ultra Immune IgG is a protein powder that is got antibodies in it. So if you got exposure and it's hitting your gut and hammering your gut, these antibodies will actually help bind to that so that you can get rid of them or neutralize them a little bit easier. And that's one you can pick up if you just go to glutenfreesociety.org and you look for Ultra Immune IgG, and it's the powdered version. We're out of our colostral version, but what we have is a serum concentrate peptide version. It actually is even more effective. And so that's the one that you want to look for. The other thing that you can do, let's say you're really hammered, is you can use one of my favorite tools to use after coming home. Actually, here it is. I found the link for you. So I'm going to plug that up there on the Ultra Immune IgG. Here we go. So there you go. That's the one. And then the last one is a product called Detox C. And Detox C, and you want the powder, not the pills. And the reason why you want the powder is because you're going to do something with that called a Detox C flush. And the whole purpose of doing this is to flush out anything that you got exposure to as quickly as possible. And so the way you do a vitamin C flush or a Detox C flush, and I'm putting that into the comment box there for you, Anne Marie, is you're going to take 2 teaspoons of that powder in 3 ounces of water. So mix it in 3 ounces of water and stir it so that the fizz dies down, and drink it. And do that every 15 minutes. So 2 teaspoons of Detox C powder in 3 ounces of water every 15 minutes until your bowels flush. Now, obviously, you're not going to do this if you've got to go to your child's birthday party at school that day. You want to do this on a day where you're not doing anything else, where you have time, because it's going to take you 4 to 6 hours to really do a good flush. And so you don't want to be interrupted, or you don't want to end up having to go somewhere where then your bowels start to flush and now you're running to find a public bathroom, and that's not a fun situation to be in. So that's what I recommend that you do if you get gluten, is to check into those 3 products to help you overcome that gluten response as quickly as possible. Okay, so I think we've gotten all the questions answered. I'm going to just scroll through these and make sure there's no other lingering ones that I missed. And again, those of you who are paying attention to the news and watching everything that's going on here in Houston, those of you who have chimed in and just sent your blessings and prayers to us, we greatly appreciate it. Keep sending them. A lot of people are out of homes. A lot of people are out of their home. A lot of people are really, really struggling. And and we need every bit of help we can get, whether it's just your prayers. I know not all of you can just fly down here, although a lot of you have. Many of you have come from Austin and Louisiana, San Antonio areas, all around the Houston area. The response from citizens coming to help us has just been absolutely wonderful and amazing, and for that we thank you greatly. But if you can contribute to Christina's GoFundMe, I would greatly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. We're just trying to get her and her family back on their feet as the school year is starting. And so again, anything you can do is helpful. And if you can't, that's fine too. But we just want to say thank you for anything you can do, whether that's a money gift or whether that's a prayer, it doesn't matter. Just want to say thank you. Let's see. It looks like I got one more last question. Actually, okay, here it is. Will I have to do this for the full 2 weeks of healing? So, Anne-Marie, I'm not sure I understand the question. For the full 2 weeks of healing, so if you do those three things, again, that would be Gluten Shield before you eat, and then Detox C and Ultra-Immune IgG. The Detox C, you're only going to do one day. You're going to complete a flush. So you're going to spend 4 to 6 hours doing a flush. It's going to flush out your system. And then after that, you can take about 5 grams of the vitamin C, which is about 1 3/4 teaspoons if you're using the Detox C powder, every day for about a month. And that in and of itself is going to help your immune system. The second part to that is the Ultra-Immune IgG. If you get contamination and you get hammered, you want to take that for at least 2 weeks, preferably somewhere more like 3 or 4 weeks. Again, you want to keep those antibodies coming to help your body make that recovery. So hopefully that clarifies your question for you. And let's see here. Next question we got. Marianne is asking, what if your Gluten Shield gives you a gut ache? So some people, the Gluten Shield has something in it called Jerusalem artichoke, and some people are real sensitive to artichokes. Generally, those individuals have problems with FODMAPs, FODMAPs. FODMAPs, also known sometimes as fructo-oligodimono and polysaccharides, are basically hard to digest carbohydrates. And so if you struggle with that may not be the right digestive enzyme support for you. I have something else called Ultra Digest GB. I'll see if I can find that for you, because that would be one of your other options. The other thing you might consider, Marianne, is looking at reducing your exposure to FODMAP-based foods, or playing with that FODMAP-based foods as a possibility that they're creating a problem. But Ultra Digest GB has no FODMAP in it at all. The reason why we even use Jerusalem artichoke in our Gluten Shield is because that particular plant acts as a prebiotic. And so understand the purpose of Gluten Shield is several-fold. One, it helps you to minimize your risk of damage from gluten contamination when you're eating out. Two, it has probiotics in it that are replaced, or rather, there's strains of probiotics that gluten can damage. So there are certain kinds of bacteria that gluten will damage in the gut, and so Gluten Shield has those particular types of bacteria in it, so that when you're using it, you're helping to replace the probiotics that you could possibly be destroying by getting cross-contamination exposure. And the Jerusalem artichoke is a prebiotic that helps those probiotics grow and flourish in the gut. So it's actually there to feed the probiotic in the Gluten Shield. So it's a multifactorial formula designed that way on purpose. And that's why I say if you're reacting to it, you might find that Ultra Digest is a better option for you because it doesn't have any prebiotics in it at all. And then the other thing, again, Marianne, is that you might want to just check out a low FODMAP diet as a tool to see if that doesn't help your digestion. If you're struggling with any kind of digestive dysfunction, that might be very, very helpful for you to kind of look at some of those FODMAP-based foods and see whether or not they're creating a problem for you. So, okay, now it looks like I've got all the questions answered. There's some really good questions tonight about travel. We're going to post the replay up for you as well. And again, next week we'll be back regular time and regular place on Friday at 1:30 Central Standard Time. We'll be back at that time this week again. this week again. Thanks for your patience and thanks for understanding. And again, thanks for all your support, whether that be financial or in prayer or in thought. We appreciate anything that you can do and send our way. Like I said, a lot of people here in the Houston area are struggling really, really heavy. So again, thank you so much and God bless and have a great evening. And we'll see you next week.